Very good to see you all here today, and welcome to those of you who are new to our monastery. So we today celebrated our Great Compassion ceremony, in which we wholeheartedly invoke the help of Kanzeon, the Bodhisattva of universal great compassion. I'm going to try to be compassionate to myself here and unfurl my papers so they don't go everywhere. And we began doing this version of this Kanzeon ceremony quite a number of years ago. I seem to recall as an evening vigil in response to the 9/11 tragedy and the war in Iraq. And eventually we developed it into today's ceremony of invocation, and now offered as a public ceremony on a Sunday every year. Anyone's welcome to come to it, as our community saw and felt a deep need in our country and throughout the world for offering compassion and healing wisdom. Compassion which really gives rise to healing wisdom. So I'd like to talk today in particular about the teaching of turning the stream of compassion within. Something that Reverend Master Jiyu, our first abbess and my master, and the master of many of the senior monks here, emphasized as important in our Buddhist training. And since I believe all of us are experiencing a lot of turbulence in our world these days, this subject has frequently been coming to my mind lately. And also because I myself am in need of exploring and taking this teaching more deeply to heart. What with the experience of older age and not being able to keep up with all that I think I should be doing, etc., maybe being short-staffed lately in the guest office during a time of transitions, and also the call for greater faith and patience in my practice. So it seems to be coming to mind a lot. So what does it mean, what do we mean when we're advised to turn the stream of compassion within? Most of us can imagine or envision offering compassion and kindness to others in need. However, many of us can leave ourselves out of the equation. I was taught that one cannot fully offer compassion for others until one has learned to have compassion for oneself. And the latter is certainly one of the foundational practices of Buddhism. All our practices point to it. When we have that the right way up, we tap into the pure compassion of Kanzeon, that aspect of the Buddha mind that is great compassion, which is as much a part of who we are at heart as it is universally present. Something always to remember. It's not an abstract concept. For me, our Serene Reflection Meditation practice is the most excellent way of turning the stream of compassion within. Just as when we begin a sitting session with a few deep breaths, we bring the breath up the back and let it fall down the front. We are also opening to the waters of compassion and allowing them to refresh and rejuvenate our being. Reverend Master Jiyu used to talk about the going in and going out in our practice. So much of our lives draw us out into doing something, or attraction to external things, or external perfection. Of course, there is that which needs to be done and is good to be done. However, unless we regularly stop and go within, we will allow these waters to become too depleted. Or to use the biblical metaphor, we will not replenish the oil in our lamp, and the light of our true nature will become diminished. So making a point of sitting still, not grasping after thoughts and things, and not pushing them away, for a time each day will fill up our well again, to combine the two metaphors, which will help us to see clearly things as they really are and what really needs to be done, so that we're not just becoming a do-gooder from an intellectual idea. We can begin to see then with the eyes of compassion, with the eyes of Kanzeon, as we hear about in the scripture of Great Wisdom, where Kanzeon sees all that makes up our human existence, the 5 skandhas, as void, unstained, and pure from the first. Often we don't think of that scripture as talking about great compassion, but it really is. So also, let's look at today's ceremony to further clarify this teaching for us. Sometimes we don't talk enough about our ceremonies and the meaning of them, I think. As we see the ceremonies in our tradition as a kind of blueprint for how to live our lives in harmony with our true selves, our Buddha nature, and that of other beings. Ceremonies don't work unless we work together, unless we are somewhat flexible. If we make a mistake, we do it graciously as best we can and not get flustered. So it's a very, very helpful practice. We began today with chanting the Kanzeon processional as we entered the hall, with voice and mind calling on the Bodhisattva to open the gates of compassion, that we may see and hear her clearly. And once inside the gate, the celebrant honors the Bodhisattva and offers incense, representing the sincerity of our wish, all of us, to train in compassion. So, celebrant, she's doing that, Reverend Master Mayan, on behalf of everyone present. We then make 3 full bows together in reverence, humility, and gratitude for Kanzeon's teaching, which we are about to hear. Today we chanted the scripture of Avalokiteshvara, or Kanzeon in Japanese, Bodhisattva, which tells of the life of great compassion. To quote part of the scripture, to calls from every quarter she responds, of oceanic depth her holy vows. A myriad Buddhas has she truly served, for ages past beyond all human thought, and made for a great vows of purity. When people hear her name and see her form, and think of her not vainly in their hearts, all forms of ill in all the worlds shall cease. And then we have many examples in the scripture of how, when faced with great challenges and seemingly impossible situations and tragedy, when we're caught between the opposites, if we can sit still within full acceptance of the situation and call on great compassion, we will find a way forward toward liberation from suffering and distress, whatever the physical outcome might be. We can substitute our own very difficult experiences into the scripture, leading to the same result, if you reflect on it carefully. Say, when faced with an approaching wildfire, hurricane, flood, landslide, or tornado seem to be becoming more frequent, or the loss of loved ones from illness, famine, or war, or ourselves being caught, say, in a fierce conflict. I have been fortunate to have not experienced directly being in a war zone in my life, although I did experience the effects of it on my parents, who were in Europe during the war, and their PTSD, I really realized in later life, much of their difficulties had to do with that, and that tends to get passed on from one generation to another. But it's still not quite the same as being there, and I can have more sympathy for them and compassion for them, knowing what they must have gone through as young people. However, in my own life, I might call on great compassion to help me with not giving into anger, irritability or frustration, greed or fear. I'm not always perfectly successful with this, but this is my training. And these are the usual causes of conflict, even in personal relationships. And I'm painfully aware of how these seeds of suffering can grow and multiply and do great harm. So we're not separate in that sense. We have the potential for doing harm, perhaps not as greatly as is being done in many places, but we always have to have the humility to be aware of our potential for doing harm. And of course, that diminishes, our pull towards it diminishes as we deepen our practice. So not to be afraid of it. So as we open to the all-embracing heart of Kanzeon, we turn the stream of compassion within and help our Buddha nature make good use of everything that occurs, everything that comes our way in life, really, gradually, steadily. Reverend Master Jiyu's teaching, many of you have heard of how in many hardships that she experienced in her training in Japan in a monastery, an all-male monastery, she realized that she needed to take everything for her own good. In other words, they weren't doing it deliberately to her. She had to see the good in it and make use of it. And that allowed her to have very deep religious experience. And although maybe with some scars, certainly, but at the same time to make use of the situation for her spiritual growth and eventually freedom, really, from suffering. After the scripture of Kanzeon, we chanted the Chinese invocation of great compassion this morning. The mantra is calling out the name of she who hears the cries of the world and responds. And I love this direct calling of the name, an unobstructed plea for help to come and quench the sufferings in our lives and in our world. Like a child calling to its mother or disciple to master. It helps for me, it makes her presence very real for me and encourages letting go, letting the obstacles dissolve into the heart of great compassion. So we train with our bodies in that way, our voices, not just our minds. I find this chanting, along with sitting still in meditation, and during the ceremony sitting still in meditation, shows me something of how to be with the suffering when it arises, or I hear of it in our world, and yet to not become overwhelmed by it. I trust then being able to be of greater positive use, as needed and as possible. Just as in our blessing verse that goes, we live in the world as if in the sky, just as the lotus blossom is not wetted by the water that surrounds it. Pure and beyond the world is the Buddha nature of the trainee. Something very directly applicable to our daily practice and when we come into contact with suffering. Then we sang the dedication of merit, the last hymn that we chanted, which was a gift from a good monastic friend, the words being a translation of a Chinese Buddhist dedication. And the hymn speaks for itself and allows us to express our heartfelt wish for peace and compassion for all. I think it's so important to have a vehicle to express these really great sentiments of our heart's wish, which we sometimes don't find we can do during the day or in ordinary situations. Again, I find these chants to be a profound way, as I mentioned, to tap into our own innate compassion, turning the stream of compassion within and letting it flow out to wherever needed as a source of merit. In the final offertory, the precentor dedicates, on behalf of everyone present again, the merits of our coming together in harmony and of all our offerings on the altar, our bows, our chanting, and good wishes for the benefit of all in need. Every ceremony we do, including our daily services, end with the dedication of the merits of our practice together for the realization of the truth for all beings. We continuously share the joys and benefits we receive with everyone, which keeps the flow of compassion open. And it does wonders for not letting things get stuck in you. If we keep the enlightenment, as it were, to ourselves, it starts to lose its meaning and reality. So sharing the joys of practice, sharing the enlightenment is so important. And this is what we call wonderful bodhisattva practice. Each of us can make a dedication like this in our own daily practice at home too. At the end of the day, before you go to bed, you can dedicate the merits of your work. You can ask for the help of Kanzeon, turn the stream of compassion within, let it work on you during the night. We too are actually Kanzeon at heart. We completed the ceremony with more bows of gratitude and inviting all beings to share in great compassion. And then close with the Kanzeon recessional, taking the teachings and our aspiration to practice compassion into our daily lives. So, again, a really helpful model for how to interact with others, how to live our daily lives. And finally, another reflection on turning the stream of compassion within is to remember following the precepts, our Buddhist precepts, in relation to ourselves as well. We often think of it more in terms of our relation to others. And I'd like to quote just a little bit to finish up here from an article that Reverend Master Phoebe, the abbess of the prior of the Pine Mountain Buddhist Temple, an article that she wrote maybe 13 years ago, I think, on treat yourself as you would others, on keeping the precepts towards yourself as a way of turning the stream of compassion within. I'll just quote some things here and there to give you a sense of it. Most of you perhaps are familiar with our precepts. If not, please ask afterwards and we'll show you a copy. The precept on not coveting. Do not covet or wish to be other than who you are. The Buddha says, know your capacities and be content with them. This points to both our limitations and our potential, and we each have to explore in depth for ourselves over time what that means and how we fully express Buddha nature in the form we call me. Do not lie to yourself about yourself. Sell yourself short in your own mind, or gossip about yourself to yourself. Does that sound familiar? If you actually were to record some of the things that go through your mind, it would be quite shocking at times, at least for me. It helps to reflect on that. Instead, be willing to sit up straight and keep coming back to what is next. Do not sell the wine of delusion to yourself. Cloud your mind with distractions, denial, or justifications. But on the contrary, look to the wisdom that arises from your own heart and allow it to guide you. And do not speak against yourself in your own mind. Watch the way you discourage yourself by thinking negative thoughts and devalue your own efforts. Nobody is perfect, and in a friend we will see the good intentions and many ways in which they find fruition. In other words, she's encouraging us to be a friend to ourselves. The small mistakes can be accepted with kindness and addressed with a friendly attitude, and ingrained personality traits can be treated with more patience and encouragement. Do not be proud of your good self, in quotes, and devalue your bad self, in quotes. This should be obvious and needs no explanation, and yet it seems to be so pervasive that it is probably good to reflect on it regularly. Both our strengths and our weaknesses are part of our own minds and can be used for practice if we wish. Another way of saying what I've been trying to point out here. It may be liberating to think of one's potential as just that, to be used for whatever we decide to use it, rather than as a dark force that we are unable to resist. Does that sound familiar to anybody? No. And energy can be redirected once we see more clearly what is driving us and what we wish to achieve. Here again, the notion of safe direction is beneficial. She's addressing in part people sometimes saying it's so hard to keep the precepts, but she frames it as just to keep going in a safe direction. And finally, do not be mean in giving anything, not just to others, but also to yourself. Be generous, but not necessarily indulgent, with your own needs and requirements. Give yourself some time every day to just be, to replenish your energies and your sense of well-being, so that you will be more able to be generous with what you have to give to others. Give yourself permission to make mistakes, recognize them, and make amends. Give yourself the benefit of the doubt, just as you would others, and trust your heart. So there we have some very nice concrete practical examples of how to look at the precepts when we need direction or inspiration, when we are trying to find ways of turning the stream of compassion within. And as we go on with our daily life, let's continue to take what we've learned today, what we've opened up to today, and bring it to whoever we come into contact with, and both things animate and inanimate. And it's been a joy to have you here today. I'll end with that. We'll see you hopefully soon again. Take care of yourselves.